Hey, good morning, and thank you so much for taking time for this call.
Yeah, no
Uh,
problem.
I know you do sort of wear multiple hats. You work as a project manager, and you also help people get ahead in their career, probably get the dream job that they've always been hoping for. And that's a fantastic work. Apart from the day job that you have, I don't know how you manage multiple things, but that's fantastic. And then you, on top of that, found time to study for PMP exam and passed it. So you are into manufacturing, right?
Yeah, I recently transitioned into tech, but my background is heavy in manufacturing. Yeah.
Okay. So why PMP and why not any other certification exams like Prince 2 or Agile or any of?
Yeah. So I've been wanting to get my PMP for quite a while, for many years. I'd say for my career, I was looking at probably two main trainings. Coming from the manufacturing space, I really wanted to get Six Sigma training, green belt and black belt training, and I'm working on those. And then the PMP was the other side of it because I really found as I started growing my career, I liked project management, and I wanted to put a nice capstone on my efforts so far through my career. The PMP is the best, well known project management certification out there, and so it gives you kind of that stamp of authenticity and approval for your work.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'm sure whenever we take up any certification exam, apart from the fact that we want to pass it, there are some other benefits that we have probably lined up in our heads, saying, okay, with this under my belt, I will do this, right? So, what were those some of the key benefits that you expected from PMP exam? And now that you have passed it, so what were your key benefits? And a month after having passed it, do you how do you see them sort of lining up?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me, especially because I was transitioning into tech, and I've been in tech now for about 6 months, is the agile side of the exam, and the material. So the uh, the other half. So coming from manufacturing, a lot of waterfall, a lot of traditional project management, and then moving into tech, it's the opposite. It's all the agile framework. So understanding that at a deep level is very important for me because I want to take that methodology and the different frameworks within agile and apply that to my role here in tech. So it's and apply it in a way that makes sense for my company. So I think going forward, I can provide a lot of benefit to my current company in that space. So it was not only a capstone for my efforts, but also a learning experience on the agile side of things.
Oh, fantastic. So, having come from manufacturing background, where it is traditionally the predictive waterfall kind of an approach, into tech industry, and then working there for several months before you took sort of a formal training, and which involved agile component. How do you see usage of agile in your new role? How was it before you took the exam, and how is it now after? Has there been any change in your approach?
Yeah, for sure. I'd come across agile, methodologies in different times and experiences, but I was really a novice. So when I got into the role, it's like any new role, you're learning a ton. You're trying to just see what the company does currently. And so now that I have more of I don't want to say expertise in agile, but a much better breadth of knowledge there that I, I see, I see me developing and iterating what we've been doing in our ways we go about it, making sure that our sprints are planned in the right duration and our retros are effective and different things that can kind of get lost over time in an organization, just kind of refining those.
Awesome. So let's say somebody comes to you and say, "Hey, Nick, help me, prepare for PMP." So, what is that one thing that you would recommend him either to have, or be, or get? I mean, it could be like tool, or some certain mindset, or any of it. What is that one thing that you would recommend that every PMP aspirant must have in order to succeed with this exam?
Yeah, I think, from my perspective, so I don't know if this is unique or not, but my company set up a training course with an outside company that trained us. And we did not get a copy of the PMBOK at all. We did not read it, and I've never even looked at it. So I I think it has a ton of value, but it does not do a great job at leading you to succeed in the test. So there's a ton of knowledge there. So my one thing that I would tell people is understand somehow, either from a trainer or from resources online, understand the types of questions you're going to face on the exam, because they're very common sense approached, and they're very like, hey, here's a problem. What should you do? And if you can just get in that mindset continually, and don't think like what the PIM box says. Think about what you would actually do. That's my greatest advice. It's very logical when you start to get into it.
Awesome. This is by some ways, I think this is sort of counterintuitive, because if you go and be on those forums, PMP forums, where typically people say that, hey, when it comes to PMP exam, just go with the ideal solution for every problem that your question may throw up, which is like PMIism, as they say, and don't depend on your experience as to how you did it. You seem to be saying the exactly opposite thing, that it is common sense, right? And then you think how you should act as a project manager. So develop that mindset continuously, and get a sense of how to approach the questions. So that's a fantastic advice. Thanks for that. So this training that you had, was it like in-house? Somebody came and had one-on-one or in a group thing, or was it virtual online?
It was virtual online. It was a group coaching setup.
Okay, and still you found it much better than like having to go through PMBOK and then taking that traditional route.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say for sure, right? Because I I haven't actually read the PMBOK and tried that route. But from what I've heard from other people, other contacts, other peers I know that have done it, it sounds like mine was a much more, like I said, method-based approach, and teaching you the foundations of waterfall and agile, but then relying on a lot of the experience that you have as a project manager. You need the 3 years coming in. Most of us come in with 5 or 10. So just rely on what you already know to apply to those specific situations.
That's fantastic. So apart from this training, did you use any other resources or simulator or anything else for the preparation?
Yeah, the training company supplied a good amount of resources for us. So when we had the group coaching calls, they had personalized videos where they would go through each of the main sections of the PMBOK, and so we did cover each of the process groups and everything like that in detail. But then the biggest resource for me that I found effective was doing the practice tests. So they had assembled questions, from PMI and then other resources, and allowed us to take full length practice tests. So I didn't take many of them, but that I found that most effective. And before we even got to that point, we were doing that in the group coaching sessions, of course, and kind of getting our strategy lined out for each of those questions. So for me, it was a lot of the practice, taking the questions just over and over and over and over. That's what I found most effective for me.
Fantastic. How many questions you might have taken approximately? Like 500, 2,000 or more?
Yeah, it's probably about 500 or so.
Okay.
I know I did a full length. I did about probably the equivalent of 1.5 PMI tests on my own. And then I did probably the same equivalent of that in the group coaching.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So, did you follow any specific study strategy or study plan or anything like that?
No, I didn't. I really followed along with the videos that the training gave out, but I found myself, for me, the best way I learn is to write down some key notes along the way. I usually don't actually review those notes, but it helps me internalize them. And then again, what I found was really it's just approach to those questions. So the more I practice the questions, I find some that I got wrong. That's the advantage of doing the practice ones, and then review those practice ones, and then retake them and try them again.
Yeah. A great point in saying that the act of just making your own notes helps you internalize, even though you don't have to go through that again. Fantastic. Yep. Very nice. So I'm sure there is so much to study, right? I mean, all 49 processes, and then agile, and then hybrid, and all that. So how long did it actually take you from the day you started with first piece of study to finally taking the exam?
Yeah, the training was about 8 weeks long, I'd say. And each week we met twice for about an hour and a half each, so 3 hours of group coaching sessions. So, like I said, a lot of it was practice questions as a group and working through those. And then there was probably anywhere from 2 to 4 hours a week on my own, going through videos and content that were provided, going through those process groups. So, on the whole, you're probably looking at 7 hours on average a week for 8 weeks. So,
fantastic.
Yeah,
around 60 hours.
Yeah, about 60 hours of training. Yeah.
Fantastic. Did you face any issues, any blockers along the way?
Yeah, imposter syndrome is a real thing with the PMP exam. You hear so many horror stories and so many, just like, oh, I took it 3 times and I failed it. And these are really smart people.
Yeah.
So it's for me, it was constantly reminding myself that if I just stuck to this training that I was in and gave it my all, and I stay focused on that, then I could overcome that. Yeah, that was my biggest thing. Just continuing on and not letting myself back out.
You really said something very important there. People who are smart, they seem to be like failing the test once, twice, thrice. Some of my students have failed thrice before they came to me. So, and they are like excellent project managers. So, why do you think that's happening to them? Any tips? Any ideas?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is it's an intimidating exam setup. You have 180 questions. I probably haven't taken that many questions since my college entrance exam. So like for me, that was 12 years ago. So
yeah.
Or longer than that, even 15 years ago. So, like to brush up on you truly have to kind of like have a strategy for taking the test just alone. So I think if you're going in, I had this thought, years ago, was like, oh, I'll just study the PMBOK. I'm a smart guy. I'll figure it out. But if I had gone in cold to this test or just taken a couple practice tests on my own, I would have fallen on my face, and been behind the 8 ball and behind the schedule, and then rushing for the last half of the test. And, I wouldn't have succeeded.
Awesome. Absolutely. So, typically for any exam for that matter, the week before the exam is very crucial, right? So how was it for you? And did you do anything specifically during this week, the week before exam?
Yeah, I procrastinated. I was traveling for work the week before the exam, and then so I didn't do any major studying. Excuse me. But I did, the night before the exam, I took a full-length practice test. It was split up similarly in the 3 sections of 60 questions each. And the first 60 questions I took, I did terrible. I got like 55% or something like that. And I was just like, oh man, this is the night before. I'm gonna be screwed. And so I reviewed those questions I got wrong, took a deep breath, got focused again on my methods and my strategies for answering the questions. And then I got back to it with the other two sections and did really well. So I did that the night before to get me back in the mode of just going through the same sort of questions over and over. And then the morning before the exam, I just reviewed the ones I got wrong again, as a refresher to get me back in that mindset.
Awesome. Awesome. Those must be some nervy moments, the night exam.
For
Okay,
sure.
got it. So how's your exam experience by itself? You took it at a test center, or did you take it online?
I took it online remotely. So I didn't have any like technical issues at all. My Wi-Fi internet was good. The app didn't crash on me. They tell you to log in, 15 or 30 minutes early or whatever to go through. I would recommend doing it a day or two before, like they allow you to, and make sure you don't have any issues. You got to download an app. So if you're having technical difficulties, you don't want to be doing that last minute.
Yeah.
So prepping that ahead of time was nice because then I was able to just log in right away in the morning. They're pretty picky about your work environment, so I had to remove a bunch of things from my desk, get them out of the way, put them out of arm's reach, show them my office. So it was kind of interesting from there. So make sure you have a webcam that you could spin around, I guess. But the exam experience itself was pretty good once I got into it, and then no technical issues at all. So yeah.
Cool. So one important question, and I'm sure everyone that's preparing for their PMP exam wants to know about this. There are some words that PMI has begun to introduce about 7 based questions on the exam. Did you get any?
I'm not too sure. I saw that question, but I wasn't, because I didn't review the PMBOK. I guess I'm not quite sure if I saw them or not.
Okay. Okay.
So nothing. I guess I went through the training in September through November, and I didn't. Nothing I saw on there was like a surprise. There might have been one question where I really was like, I don't know what they're saying here, or I forgot a process group or something. But in general, I either like knew what I was looking at, or I remembered as I was reading the question.
Cool. I expect, to be honest, at least like 3, 4, 5 questions from the new set of questions, even if it is PMBOK 7 or anything else, because out of 180, only 175 are taken towards scoring your test, and the rest 5 are pre-test questions. So there is possibility that you'll get a question and think, where is this coming from? I have no clue about this, right? It's quite possible, and still it wouldn't hurt you because it's one of those pre-test questions.
Sure.
So any specific study tips or anything for people who are preparing for their exam?
Yeah, it's good to have that core base of the process groups for sure, and understanding the history and the intent behind the agile methodologies. If you haven't done, I'd say, if you haven't done the waterfall side of it, I think you might be at a little bit of a disadvantage because the depth of that side of the exam is pretty deep, and they have, honestly, they kind of have weird names and redundant names for a lot of the process groups. Like plan is in like 15 or 20 of them. So like, where are you planning this is a tough question. But again, you don't need to really know that. You just need to kind of understand it. So my tip is that if you're on the water, if you haven't had a lot of waterfall experience, spend a little extra time on the process groups there. The agile side, I think, is pretty easy to pick up for people. It makes a lot of sense if you've done traditional work. And then, like I talked about before, really understand the types of questions that you're going to face. And it's, like I said, if you just, 90% of them, maybe more, is just, hey, you're faced with this situation. What should the project manager do next? And if you just remember that and keep and don't try to get in the mind of PMI. And like you said, PMI or whatever, right? I found myself doing that, and it's just, you start to second guess yourself and you're going to get it wrong. And I saw that on the practice tests. I saw that in the group coaching, and our coach would always hammer that in us as well. Just stop, like, what, because we'd be talking it through, in the group coaching, and people would be honest, including myself. We're like, well, I would do this, but I think PMI wants me to do this. And it's like, don't think like that. You're setting yourself up for failure. So that's
Yeah,
my biggest.
that's an awesome advice. Thanks for sharing that. So, a little bit about how you help project managers, Nick. So, if anyone who's reading this interview or watching this video, however they find you, how can they reach out to you and get help for their career advancement?
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, so best way to reach me is on my LinkedIn profile. So Nick Korwin, Korwin with a K, and DM me, start a conversation, reach out, send a connection request, whatever makes you most comfortable. I love having conversations with people and learning their situations. I take free clarity calls with people as well to get to know them and give them a path forward and some action tips, even if they don't want to work with me or if I can't help them. I try to lead them in the right direction.
Fantastic, fantastic. Okay, so thanks for that, Nick. That's all I had in terms of asking you questions from a PMP perspective.